Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is Renegade Operative here, and welcome to a brief cooperative podcast update. Now, I wanted to talk to you guys about a few things that we changed because we had a few restructures here or there to try to benefit all the people giving us feedback, and one of those things was we decided to rebrand the podcast name from the Cooperative Podcast to TCP Podcast, and the channel name from the Cooperative Podcast to the Cooperative Experience. And the reason for that is because a lot of people told me that we were getting drowned out by Total Biscuit search results. Now, I never seen Total Biscuit's podcast, and remember, this name was voted on. People voted on this name. There was a various assortment of names. I've never heard of Total Biscuit's podcast by then, and people voted on the Cooperative Podcast. So what I did was I changed some things. If you type in TCP Podcast, we should be on the first page. If you type in the Cooperative Experience, you should find our channel. Like I said, I don't want my polls to have any sort of misnomer to them, to the fact where people vote on them and they become invalid because we don't pick this option. Unless it's bad. Unless it's really bad, then of course I'm not going to do it. But it's something to take heed of. And the second thing that we're changing around is the podcast format. We're going to keep it a little bit on the short side. We're going to keep it a little bit non-bloated because we always put the pre-stream in front. And what I notice is that people really don't take a lot of attention to podcasts that are over 5 or 6 hours. You know what I mean? They start clocking out at 3. And I can sort of feel the sentiment is that when I get to like a 5-hour or 6-hour podcast, I clock out at 3. I'm like, I'm done. I got stuff to do. I can't be sitting here all night. I mean, props to the people that want to listen to that stuff for the entirety of the session. But what we're going to do is we're going to keep it more on point with the gaming stuff. And for the pre-streams, you can swing by the channel and look at those because I will be uploading those separately. And I think it helps out in the long run because I was uploading videos that were like 30 gigs. It's no joke. If you upload a podcast over like all this footage and you have like the pre-streams and you have gameplay and all this other stuff in there, you know, you render it in Sony Vegas, it's like 30-40 gigs. And it's really taxing to the space that I have on my computer with the free space that I have. So I have to cut stuff down a little bit. So I could just render the pre-streams. You can go watch those. And I will render the podcast in smaller bulk. So we won't go over like 3 hours. I think that'll be good. Like 2 hours and 30 minutes is good enough for a podcast in my opinion. The other thing that I want to let you guys know is that some niche games, like some stuff that people don't know about, they will be regulated to smaller topics. That's because a lot of people might not even know about these obscure games. But you know, if it's an indie and if it's something that I think people should give a shot, or if it's an interesting subject entirely, then I don't think we're going to glance over that gaming news. Other than that, the podcast is going to be relatively the same. There's a lot of guests coming on board for Friday, and this is the most guests we had like in a long time, so I'm looking forward to it. If there's any other changes, I have a Google document to illustrate those just in case. So this is Renegade Operative signing off. Hopefully you guys enjoy, and we will be uploading more. Also, be well aware and on the lookout. There will be a massive uploading spree pretty soon. Just be warned, because I have not got on and unlisted all of the videos that I have. And also, this podcast format for the TCP podcast does not apply to all our other podcasts. They will run as long as we want, because I feel you can't put a time limit on the episodic discussion. You can't do it, because you're covering an entire video game franchise, which is what the episodic discussion is. It's us talking about an entire franchise that spans over like 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 games. And you can't keep that condensed. You just can't do it. You have to, you know, talk about your experience and have those questions ready for that. So the format for all the other stuff probably won't change until further notice. But I think that this is a good update so far. I think that it's good that we're listening to fan feedback, and that the main podcast is going to be shortened and to the point and more concise with the content that's going to happen with it. So this is Renegade Operative signing off. Like I said, there's a Google document that you can see for all the changes with the TCP podcast restructure. You can read all that off. Like I said, I'm not going to list everything on that, even though it's important. But you can go ahead and look at the changes if you want. And also, like I said, the podcast format for the people getting on board, it's going to be like 8 people max, because I feel anything lower than that will be boring. Anything like mad low, like about 2 people or 3 people per podcast, I can't do it. I'd rather have all my friends on board. I'd rather have a guest on board, and I don't think that I would do lower than like 4 people. It's just not happening. So max podcast members are going to be 8, and for interview it'll be 6 max, because we're mainly going to be talking to the people we will be interviewing. So I don't think that having a large bundle of people talking over the guests would be in our favor. And that's about it for this update. I mean, like I said, if I didn't cover anything, Google Doc, check it out in the description below. This is Renegade Operative signing out. Hopefully you guys have a good day. Peace. And watch out for that content upload. It's going to flood. Like I said, 6 videos unlisted is coming. So be prepared for that. Peace.